First, we'll address content area literacy in math. So the first evidence-based approach that I want to reference were concept sorts, where students are presented a list of terms or concepts and have to determine how they're related by placing them into different categories. This is impactful for literacy learning in the math classroom because they allow you to introduce new vocabulary that students will encounter in the assigned text, quickly provide you with information about how much your students already know about a topic, familiarize students with the vocabulary of a new topic or book, and encourage students to practice categorizing and conceptualizing new information. The standard that I've chose to reference is GSE 8.PAR.4, which is show and explain the connections between proportional and non-proportional relationships and lines and linear equations. Create and interpret graphical mathematical models and use the graphical mathematical model to explain real phenomena represented in the graph. So students can use concept sorts in relationship to this standard by sorting different groups of graphs by slope value, y-intercept value, or indicated x values. Moving to Think, Pair, Share. Think, Pair, Share is a cooperative learning strategy where students work together to solve a problem or answer a question about an assigned reading. This is impactful for literacy learning in the math classroom because it helps students to think individually about a topic or answer to a question, teaches students to share ideas with classmates, which builds oral communication skills, and helps focus attention and engage students in comprehending the reading material or problem. So the standard that I've chose to reference is GSE 8.MP, which is students will display perseverance and patience in problem solving, demonstrate skills and strategies needed to succeed in mathematics, including critical thinking, reasoning, and effective collaboration and expression, seek help and apply feedback, set and monitor goals. So Think, Pair, Share can be used. So Think, Pair, Share applies directly to each of these skills that have been indicated in the standard, especially thinking critically and collaboration, just based on the explanation that I gave for the benefits of Think, Pair, Share. So now we'll talk about content area literacy as it relates to science. The two approaches that I've chosen to reference are word maps and inquiry charts. Word maps are visual organizers that promote vocabulary development, generally by engaging students in developing a definition, synonym, antonyms, and a picture for a given vocabulary word or concept. This is impactful for literacy learning in the science classroom because it helps students develop their understanding of a word by building upon prior knowledge and visually representing new information to support oral and reading comprehension. Word maps can be applied across content areas and grade levels, so the example that I chose to use was GSE S8P1, which is obtain, evaluate, and communicate information about the structure and properties of matter. Within this standard, students can use word maps to visualize vocabulary such as atoms, nucleus, electron, proton, and neutrons. Moving to inquiry charts. Inquiry charts are where students record answers to posed questions and generate a summary after reading or listening to several sources on a topic. These are impactful for literacy learning in the science classroom because they foster critical thinking, strengthen reading skills, and teach students to generate meaningful questions about a topic, organize their writing, and build upon prior knowledge or thoughts about the topic by sharing interesting facts. The standard I will use inquiry charts for is GSE S8P5, which is students will obtain, evaluate, and communicate information about gravity, electricity, and magnetism as major forces acting in nature. So, a place where students can use inquiry charts within the standard, they can use inquiry charts to build an evidence-supported argument that fields exist between objects exerting forces on each other, even when the objects are not in contact. This is a direct substandard of S8P5. Finally, we'll look at content area literacy in social studies. So the two approaches that I've chosen to use here are semantic feature analysis and RAFT. So semantic feature analysis is a chart or grid used to examine, compare, and make decisions between related concepts based on particular criteria. This is impactful for literacy learning in the social studies classroom because it builds vocabulary and background knowledge, helps students differentiate between the meanings of related words and concepts by showing how they are similar and different, draws on students' prior knowledge, and lends itself to academic discussion. The standard I've chosen to relate this to is GSE SS8CG1, Describe the Foundations of Georgia's Government. Students can use semantic feature analysis to compare the roles, functions, and capabilities of each branch of the Georgia government, legislative, judicial, and executive. Next is RAFT. RAFT is a writing strategy that helps students understand their role as a writer, the audience they will address, the varied formats for writing, and the topic they'll be writing about, which is the basis of RAFT: role, audience, formats, and topic. RAFT is impactful for literacy learning in the social studies classroom because it helps students structure their writing, think more deeply about the purpose and audience of their work, write from different points of view, and think creatively and systematically about writing by responding to prompts. The standard that I've chosen to reference here is GSE L6-8WHST4, which is students will produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. RAFT sets a solid framework for students to be able to do this. So, as we've talked about, there are a bunch of different strategies that can be used to address content area literacy within different subjects. All the strategies that I've used very intentionally in the fact that they can be used across different subjects, not just limited to the one that I applied them to. If anyone would like any particular resources such as templates, demonstrations, prompts, lesson plans, sample lessons, things like that, they can be found on readingrocket.com. Criteria 9, communicating content. This section is going to talk about how I can use this presentation to communicate the information that I've learned to parents, to my colleagues, and to other stakeholders in students' academic progress. Communication with colleagues. I can share my presentation with colleagues such as my principal, new special education teachers, co-teachers, and general education teachers who work with students on my caseload, especially those that we've previously identified as likely having dyslexia. Since I'm the only returning special education teacher this year, I'm in a unique position to provide background on our students and guide these early conversations. With pre-service training beginning soon, actually next week, I plan to use the presentation as a foundation to help onboard the new team, encourage professional dialogue, and align our instructional strategies. My goal is to foster an environment where we all share responsibility for understanding and supporting students with dyslexia or likely having dyslexia, rather than just being reliant on the special education teachers. When it comes to communicating with parents and students, I'm pretty fortunate to have strong engagement from my students' parents. I plan to use my presentation as a conversation starter during parent-teacher meetings or informational sessions, helping families to better understand dyslexia and how it might affect their child's learning. Many parents express that they want to help their child, but they simply don't know how. And this is where the presentation becomes a tool. I can use it to explain what we observe in school, as parents what they see at home, and together we can identify strategies that support their child across settings.